Okay, we're going to do another video. For those of you who are new to my channel, I respectfully ask you to stop this video now and watch What's in Our Skies. Houston, we have a problem. That will explain to you the basics of the Nibiru system and what's going on with our skies. This is a more advanced tutorial for the people who have actually been following this channel. Um, so again, if you're new to this channel, please go look at What's in Our Sky. Houston, we have a problem. Um, it will explain everything to you, and then you can come back to this video. For those who are subscribing to my channel and you've basically gone through the basics, let's start this tutorial. This one's going to be a doozy, and I've come to realize why no one else who's following the Nibiru system has ever even attempted to explain things to you the way I am tonight. Because basically, first I'm going to answer some comments and questions that were left for me, and then we're going to go straight into the tutorial. This tutorial is going to be divided into 3 sections. The first section of the tutorial, once we finally get started, will be pretty simplistic by nature. Hopefully everyone will be able to understand it. The second one I'm going to call the medium, because that is going to be a little bit more difficult, a little bit more challenging. And then the last part of this tutorial, I'm going to blow your minds. It's going to be high science. I hope you'll be able to follow it. If not, watch it again a second time, maybe even a third time, and then ask me any questions that you have. And if I can, I'll try to explain it in a more simplistic way. But right now, let me answer some viewers' questions. A person asked me about the sun. Okay, here's the sun in the daytime sky. Let me take away the atmosphere. Notice the clock taking away the atmosphere. So this is what, if you took away the sky and just, the atmosphere, this is what our sky would look like. Our sun is here, and Venus is right over here to the east. Now the question was, how do I know that the sun is in the constellation that I said it is? Well, this is a star chart called Stellarium. Anyone can get this. You can download it for free. I strongly suggest that you do. But this basically shows you where the constellations are in the sky. Now notice the clock. It's set for 1:05 and 6 seconds. Let me stop that clock for a moment. I know this says 13, but that means military time. So in all reality, it is 1:05 and 8 seconds on 6/14/26. Now the second question is, does the sun move into the sky? Yes, everything, stars, sun, planets, everything moves. So let me show you how that works. So right now it is in Taurus. It's in the constellation of Taurus, right above the bull's horns. Now let's go and change the date. We're going to go date by day and watch how the sun moves in the sky. So every day it's moving to another constellation. It's moving over to Gemini right now, the twins. So there we go. Notice the clock is changing every day. The sun is changing. The planets are moving. That's the way it's supposed to be. So the sun does not stay in the same place all the time, and the planets and the stars move around it. Everything in space is moving. So again, right now, the constellation is in Taurus. Let's bring it on back. Right there between the horns. So the Nibiru system would be to the west of the sun, right in here. This is where the Nibiru system is. Right in here. We're watching it in the mornings. Okay, so that's one question. Let me answer another one. get this up real quick. Okay, this is from a viewer by the name of Power Mad, and I love your question. It's really great. Actually, you've inspired me to take the next step and go ahead and explain something incredibly complex, which will be at the end, but no other Nibiru researcher has posted anything about this. So I'm going to take the first step. I'm going to try my best to explain something truly complex. We're going to start out very elementary. And the question that Power Mad asked is, I like your explanation of things. However, where then are the orbs that would be visible from Mercury, Venus, and Mars, etc.? They don't cast orbs. And let me give you the science behind this. And I really love this question, by the way. Power Mad, whoever you are, you ask great questions. So first, before we even get started, I don't want to get emails for people not understanding what I'm saying. So let me state it clearly, okay? The moon, planets, asteroids, natural satellites, and comets shine by the light that's reflected from our sun. This happens because of the angle in which the sun's rays strike them relative to the earth. So I hope you understand that. The moon shines not because the moon shines, it's because the sun shines on the moon and makes it shine. Okay? So now let's talk about Mercury. You're looking at a picture of Mercury right now. Mercury is made out of a large percentage of heavier elements, mainly iron. It is essentially a large metal ball of iron with a very thin silicate crust. Mercury's core makes up 75% of the planet. Its thin mantle or crust is only 300 to 400 miles thick. But not a lot of luminous properties on Mars. That's why it doesn't glow. It only shines in the sky, in the nighttime sky, when our sun hits it. So let's go to Venus. Venus is made up of a central iron core and a rocky mantle, similar to the composition of Earth. Its atmosphere is mainly made up of carbon dioxide, about 96%, and nitrogen, about 3%, and other small amounts of other gases. But again, not a lot of reflective materials, so it doesn't glow. It only shines when the sun's light shines on it. It doesn't cast any orbs. Then we go to Mars. Love Mars. Okay, the dust that covers the surface of Mars is like a fine talcum powder. Beneath the layers of dust, the Martian crust consists mostly of volcanic basalt rock. The soil of Mars also holds nutrients such as sodium, potassium, chloride, and magnesium. In other words, not a lot of reflective properties. So that's why they don't cast orbs. But let's talk about Nibiru. Okay, let me close this down and we're going to look at pictures. Because while I talk, I think you should be entertained. Let's go here. Let's go here. And let's start this while we have a conversation about Nibiru. Let's put it on a slideshow so you get something to look at. And let's put it on fade. And now let's talk about Nibiru. Let's talk about the truth about Nibiru and the stuff people make up. Why they make it up, I have no idea. But let's deal with reality. Because, as you know, I like to chase the evidence. But let's talk about the BS stuff that people are saying about Nibiru. Okay, the red dot, as I call it, is that Nibiru? I have no idea. I honestly, if I knew it, I would tell you, but I don't. But that red dot is a red dot in the sky. You're looking at it right there. As you know, the sun's light hits that red dot and casts orbs out into our sky, out into space, and down toward Earth. But what they're saying about that is that red dot is a red dwarf. Question was, what is a red dwarf? And why are they saying that? Well, again, I don't know why they're saying that. There's no evidence that it is a red dwarf. But let's talk about what a red dwarf is. A red dwarf are stars weighing in at about 7.5 to 50% the mass of our sun. Less massive stars are known as brown dwarfs, owing to their comparatively low luminosity. While most massive stars, including our own sun, are yellow dwarfs, their reduced mass means that red dwarfs have a cooler surface temperature than the sun, reaching only 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Let's think about that for a minute. From what we know about the Anunnaki, what we know about the planet Nibiru, could they live on a planet that's 5,000 degrees? Well, first of all, a red dwarf is not a planet, it's a star. So could they live on a star that's 5,000 degrees? No, no. They specifically said they lived on a planet, not on a star. So it could not be a red dwarf. Okay, would it be a brown dwarf? That's a question. Well, because brown dwarfs have so little mass, it can easily be confused with massive planets, especially the growing catalog of gas giants. Similarly, their lack of fusion can raise similar concerns. One way to tell the difference is that brown dwarfs, like all stars, create their own light. Brown dwarfs glow in a red and infrared spectrum until they significantly cool down, emitting X-rays and infrared light that scientists can measure. Okay, even so, the dividing line between a cool brown dwarf and a planet can be quite small. Some brown dwarfs are cool enough to maintain atmospheres, much like gas giants. Brown dwarfs can host planets, but gas giants can have moons in orbit. So how do you determine whether a free-floating object is a planet or a very cool brown dwarf? Well, brown dwarfs have a surface temperature that ranges between 800 and 1,880 degrees Fahrenheit. Again, could the Anunnaki, could the people from Nibiru live on a planet that's 800 to 1,880 degrees Fahrenheit? No. No, they could not. So, as I said, we chased the evidence here that they specifically said they lived on a planet, not on a star, not on a red dwarf, not on a brown dwarf. Is that red dot a red dwarf or a brown dwarf? Let's talk about that. In all of the ancient Sumerian texts, never once did they mention a red dwarf or a brown dwarf being anywhere near their planet. Think about that for a moment. They talked about entering our solar system. They talked about the colors of the planets that they encountered. They talked about the content of the planets that they encountered. But when they talked about their own planet, they never once mentioned a red dwarf or a brown dwarf. What we know about their planet, it is surrounded by 11 other planets and moons. That's the story from the collision of Tiamat's. I'm sure you people who have read Zecharia Sitchin's work are familiar with that. So there are 11 planets and moons in the Nibiru system, but never once did they ever mention a brown dwarf or a red dwarf. Never mentioned it. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm taking their word for it. So the theory that it's a red dwarf or a brown dwarf, don't know where it came from, don't know who invented it, but the Anunnaki never said it, Enki never said it, It was never written down in any ancient Sumerian text, so I don't know where that theory came from. Um, your guess is as good as mine, but I go with what is written, and I say no. So, with that said, let's go. Oh, let's also talk about other planets that are red. You know, Mars is red, but did you know that Pluto is red? Underneath all that snow, Pluto is a red planet. So even though it's been demoted, I still call it a planet because in my heart, Pluto is still a planet. I refuse to demote Pluto. But anyway, let's go. Let's chase some evidence, okay? Actually, this is what this tutorial is going to be about, chasing the evidence. And you're going to have to excuse me a little bit because I'm getting over a cold. So if I get a little tongue-tied or if I cough, please excuse me. If you've ever had a cold, you understand. But let's start with Zachariah Sitchin, the man who introduced us to the whole Nibiru system. He was a Russian-born author of books that he based his translations and interpretations on ancient texts of pre-Nubian and Sumerian origin, and from astronomical and scientific observation. And what you might not know is that his brother Amon Sitchin is a PhD in aeronautical and mechanical engineering, and he is also the person who calculated the orbit of Nibiru for Sitchin, I can't even talk, and is still doing additional calculations on the system as of January 2016. So I'm hoping he's still working. That would be good. So again, you know, Nibiru, it has 11 moons and planets in its system. But let's talk for a minute. Let's think about what the ancient Sumerians wrote down, what information we actually know about the Nibiru system. So I'm going to read you some segments from the Lost Book of Enki, describing the planets uh, for your review. So let's start. Okay, a great planet, reddish in radiance, around the sun an elongated circuit Nibiru makes. For a time in the cold is Nibiru engulfed. For part of its circuit by the sun strongly it is heated. A thick atmosphere Nibiru envelops, by volcanic eruptions constantly fed. All manner of life this atmosphere sustains. Without it there is only perishing. In the cold period, the inner heat of Nibiru, it keeps the planet like a warm blanket that is constantly renewed. In the hot period, it shields Nibiru from the sun's scorching rays. In its mists, rain it holds in release, to lakes and streams giving rise. Lush vegetation our atmosphere feeds and protects. All manner of life in the waters and on land to sprout it caused. So let's think about what they're saying about their own planet. Okay, Nibiru, it has a thick atmosphere. It has plant life. It has lush vegetation. It has all manner of life in the waters and on land. It's fed or it is kept warm by the volcanic eruptions. But then we go on in the text and we read about Nibiru suffering from climate changes. Let me read. The planet starts to get hotter than normal as it makes its circuit around the sun, and colder than normal when it's made its way back. In other words, they notice the climate change affecting their planets. So let's go back to the text and read what they said. Learned savants, those of great knowledge, to inquire were commanded. The land and soil they examine, the lakes and streams they put to the test. It has happened before, some gave an answer. Nibiru in the past colder and warmer has grown. A destiny it is, and the circuit of Nibiru embedded. Others acknowledged the circuit observing. Nibiru's destiny to blame it did not consider. In the atmosphere, a breaching hole occurred. That was their finding. Volcanoes the atmosphere forbade. Less belching were spitting up. Nibiru's air has thinner been made. The protective shield has been diminished. Let's stop here and think about that. What they're basically talking about is climate change. The air is getting thinner. The volcanoes are not erupting anymore. They're starting to have some problems. So let's go on and read about some of the solutions that they have. Okay, one was to use a metal. Gold was its name. On Nibiru, it is greatly rare. Within the hammered bracelet, it was abundant. It was the only substance that the finest powder could be ground. Lofted high to the heavens, suspended it could remain. Thus with replenishments, the breach it would heal, protection made better. Their second option was, let me read it, let weapons of terror be created, was the other suggestion. Weapons that the ground shook loose, the mountains split asunder, with missiles the volcanoes to attack, their dormancy to bestir, the belching to increase, the atmosphere to replenish, the breach to make disappear. So their solution was basically not the first one. That was not their first choice. Their second choice was the one they chose. They created missiles. They blew up volcanoes. But did this help? This is their own words. The belching by volcanoes did not increase. The breach in the atmosphere did not heal. So we go on and read what else happens. Now this is where Alanu is coming to Earth. And the reason why I'm reading this is because they're comparing what Earth is like compared to their own planet. So let's read. Then snow-hued Earth appeared, the seventh in the celestial count. Toward the planet Alanu set his course, to a destination most inviting. Smaller than Nibiru was his alluring ball. Weaker than Nibiru's was its attracting net. Its atmosphere thinner than Nibiru's was. Clouds were within it swirling. Okay, let's talk about that for a moment. Okay, they're comparing Earth to Nibiru. They're saying that Earth's gravitational field is smaller. It's weaker. The exact line smaller than Nibiru, so it's a smaller size. Smaller than Nibiru was its alluring ball. Weaker than Nibiru was its attracting net. It talks about the atmosphere. Its atmosphere thinner than Nibiru's was. Clouds were within it swirling. I thought it was interesting they made notes of the clouds. I don't know if that means they don't actually have clouds on their planet. I don't know. But I thought it was unusual that they paid attention to that. Now, in this reading, there's something that I read to you that you may have overlooked. You may have skipped over. You may not have noticed. That's what this tutorial is going to be about, y'all. It's going to be about the gold. The whole entire reason they came to Earth to begin with. Now again, I've come to understand why no other Nibiru researcher has ever done a YouTube video about the gold itself. And it's because this is more complex than I ever even knew. I had to do a lot of homework, a lot of research. And yeah, the first part I think we can all understand, because it's basically our concept of what gold truly is. But then it's going to get more difficult from there. But let me reread what was written because I want you to understand, okay? Back when they were talking about the first option, which they did not choose in the beginning, they chose to attack the volcanoes. One of their options was gold. So let me read it again and pay close attention to what I'm saying. One was the use of metal. Gold was its name. On Nibiru, it was greatly rare. Within the hammered bracelet, it was abundant. It was the only substance that to the finest powder could be ground. Lofted high to heaven, suspended it could remain. Thus, with replenishments, the breach it would heal, protection it would make better. Okay, think about it. They're taking the gold and they're turning it into the finest powder. Why would they powder gold? That's what we're going to talk about tonight. Okay, like I said, the first part is going to be pretty simplistic. We can all follow along. But it's going to get deep from there. So let's start out with basic gold. Gold, the metal. Take it out of the ground. Okay, gold is a chemical element with an atomic number of 79. What that basically means is that there are 79 atoms in the metal itself. In its purest form, it is bright, shiny, reddish yellow, dense, soft, and malleable. Chemically, gold can be is a transition metal and is a group of 11 elements. It is one of the least reactive chemical elements and is solid under standard circumstances. Gold's atomic number is 79. It makes it one of the highest atomic number elements to occur naturally in the universe. It is thought to have been produced by a supernova nuclear synthesis and from a collision of neutron stars, to have been present in the dust from the solar system when it was formed. Because Earth was a molten when it was just formed, almost all of the gold excuse me, almost all of the gold present in the early Earth sank into the planetary core. Therefore, most of the gold that is present today in Earth's crust and in its mantle is thought to have been delivered to Earth later by an asteroid impact during the late heavy bombardment, which was about 4 billion years ago. Gold is a precious metal used for coinage, jewelry, other arts throughout recorded history. In the past, the gold standard was often implemented as a monetary policy within and between nations, but gold coins ceased to be minted and circulated in currency in the 1930s, and the world gold standard was abandoned for a fiat currency system around 1976. The historic value of gold is rooted in its relative rarity, its easy handling and minting, easy smelting and fabrication, resistant to corrosion and other chemical reactions, notably, and its distinctive color. A total of 183,600 tons of gold is in existence above the ground as of 2014. The world's consumption of new gold produced is about 50% in jewelry, 40% in investments, and 10% in industry. Gold's high malleability, ductivity, and resistance to corrosion and most other chemical reactions and conductivity of electricity has led it to continued use in corrosion-resistant electrical connectors of all types of computerized devices, its chief industrial use. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about gold. Okay, we know it's used in jewelry. We know that it was part of the monetary system. But what actually can gold do? Well, gold is used in infrared shielding, colored glass production, gold leafing, and tooth restoration. Certain gold salts are still used as anti-inflammatories in medicine. Okay, gold, the metal, conducts electricity and heat. It has a metallic luster. Some of its properties are attributed to the way the electrons are arranged in the material. Gold is so malleable it can be beaten into gold leaf, revealing a bluish-green color when the light is transmitted through it. Gold reflects yellow and red, but not blue or blue-green. The direct transmission of light through a metal in the absence of reflection is observed only in rare instances. Let me give you an example so you can understand. I want you to think of an astronaut's helmet, just for a minute. The outer sun visor is made from a polycarbonate plastic, and a coating of thin, layered gold is on top of that. This combination gives complete protection to the astronaut. Why? Because your eyes can focus both on visible and near-infrared light onto your retina equally as well. Your eyes have visible receptors, but not infrared ones. When intense light hits these receptors, the receptors transmit information letting you know that this is painful and it'll cause a damage if you don't close your eyes or look away. On the other hand, without infrared receptors, you won't realize that your eyes are being burnt with an intense infrared source. Therefore, astronauts need infrared protection from the intense sunlight from above the Earth's atmosphere. Using a gold-coated visor reflects almost all infrared, but gold will also transmit about 60% of visible as well as ultraviolet light, and with the visors down, you can see a blue-green hue to the objects. On the other hand, about 60% of the ultraviolet light is transmitted through the gold, but the polycarbonate plastic visor has an excellent visible transmittance, but absorbs and reflects almost all ultraviolet. So the astronaut would see in his helmet a blue-greenish color when the light is transmitted through it, but it would reflect out a yellow or a red. So I hope you're all with me with that. Sorry, I'm reading from notes because this is so much information I have to. So again, think of astronaut's visor. With the visor down, with that gold leaf visor down, the astronaut is seeing everything with a bluish green color. So the light that's coming in from that visor, everything has a blue greenish tint to it, a blue greenish hue. But the light radiating off the visor is radiating yellow and red light. So again, take good notice of that orb. What color is that orb that we're constantly seeing? That bright red orb. So think about that. Okay, but this is gold, the metal, gold that we all understand. Now we're going to the second part. Now it gets a little bit harder. I'm going to try my best to explain this to you. Some of you may have heard of this. Some of you may have not. We're going to talk about colloidals. You may have heard of colloidal silver being used as a natural, I'm going to call it agent, a natural agent against sickness and disease instead of using antibiotics, which we all know the problem with antibiotics. This is a natural substance that helps your body heal. You may have heard of colloidal silver, but you probably haven't heard of colloidal gold. I can barely say that word. Let's talk about what again, this is a tongue twister. Colloidal actually is. Okay, a colloidal in chemistry is a mixture in which a substance of microscopically dispensed and soluble properties are suspended throughout another substance. To qualify as a colloidal, the mixture must be one that does not settle, or doesn't take too long to settle. Okay, a good example that you can understand is milk. I want you to think about that, milk. Milk is an emulsified colloidal of a liquid butterfat globules dispensed within a water-based solution. So this is kind of what we're talking about. We're talking about tiny, tiny little particles of gold that's suspended in a liquid solution. So colloidal gold is suspended in something, okay? And the dispersed phase particles of the gold that would be a diameter between approximately 1 to 1,000 nanometers. So we're talking tiny little particles. Such particles are normally easily visible in an optical microscope, although the smaller sized ranged an ultramicroscope or an electron microscope may be required to see it. Colloidal gold is translucent because of the Tyndall effect, which it scatters the light particles in the colloidal. So in other words, it is bright, it is shiny, it is radiant, it is glowing. So a colloidal are tiny little gold particles that are suspended in a liquid that makes it shiny, bright, and glowing. So we know they're coming here for the gold. They took the gold, but they're saying they turned it into a powder. So we go on to the powder portion. Now this gets even more complex. Okay. Have you ever heard of monatomic gold? Well, I haven't. I had to research it. But that is basically what they were making when they were powdering the gold. Okay. So let me stop here because this is so difficult to understand. Okay, monatomic gold. First we have the metal, this gold. You understand that 72 atoms in that metal. Then they break it down to very, very small, tiny parts, to monoparticulates, to make it into colloidal, which is gold suspended in a liquid, which is shiny, bright, luminous, and glowing. But then they break it down even smaller. Now we're going to talk about alien technology, what they were using it for. To be honest with you, I am not intelligent enough to explain this to you, so I have gotten the report from two physicists, and hopefully the first report is easy enough for you to understand. The second report is much more complex. You basically need a master's in quantum physics to understand the second one. So we're going to start at the first. I'm going to read a little bit of what he said, then I'm going to try to explain it or translate it in the most elementary way that I possibly can. But when you're talking about monatomic gold, we are talking about alien technology. We are talking about people who are millions and millions of years more advanced than we are. We are just now learning and trying to understand this technology, and it is freaking mind-blowing. That's the only way I can explain it to you. It almost sounds like complete science fiction, except for the fact that it's real. And our scientists are now studying it. For you people who are big into conspiracy theories, monoatomic gold is basically going to give you all the weapons you need to feed your theories, your conspiracy theories, because this is some deep shit. So anyway, okay, let's start, and I hope you can follow along. If not, I will do my best to try to re-explain this to you. So let's go. Conventional science is aware of 6 phases of matter, which are gas, liquid, solid, plasma, Bose-Einstein condensate, and liquid crystal. Let me read that again, because this is what we know. This is conventional science. Conventional science is aware of 6 phases of matter, which are a gas, liquid, solid, plasma, Bose-Einstein condensate, and liquid crystal. What conventional science is becoming aware of now are monoatomic elements. In the late 1980s, some nuclear physicists discovered that atoms of certain elements were arranged in microclusters. These microclusters are very tiny groups of atoms ranging from 2 to 700 atoms. Certain metals with a specific number of atoms that are present in a microcluster, these atoms will arrange themselves in a lattice structure with metallic properties. However, if fewer than the critical number of atoms are present, the microcluster will disintegrate into monoatomic atoms with ceramic properties. So let me stop here and explain what I just said to you. Okay, you take a substance and you break it down to its critical number of atoms. With gold, the critical number of atoms that you have to have for it to be metal, for it to be gold, is 2. What happens if you take that and take only 1 atom? What happens to that? Okay, it breaks itself down. That 1 atom disintegrates and becomes monoatomic atoms. So that 1 atom is not destroyed, it becomes something else. So when gold has 2 atoms in it, you're with only 2 atoms, it's still a metal. When it has 1 atom, that 1 atom disintegrates and becomes a group of monoatomic atoms. But that is no longer a metal anymore. It is now has ceramic properties. So it has changed into something else completely. Okay, I hope you're with me so far. Okay, since monoatomic elements have atoms that aren't arranged in a rigid lattice pattern, their physical characteristics are quite different from elements with atoms that are arranged in a rigid lattice network. In other words, the physical characteristics of an element isn't only determined by the number of neutrons and protons, but its microcluster or grouping of atoms. An example, in a metallic element such as gold, if there isn't a lattice network present, there is no physical metal. Even if its atoms are identical to the metallic element within a lattice network, this example shows that the determining factor of the characteristics of matter aren't limited to the number of neutrons or protons in the atom. According to scientists, the critical number of atoms in gold is 2. The significance of this critical number is that there are 2 or more gold atoms in a microcluster. The gold will only exhibit metallic characteristics with 2 atoms. When there is only 1 atom in the microcluster, that atom will disintegrate and become a group of monoatomic atoms. In other words, it becomes something completely different. Okay, it goes on. explain monatomic atoms, but it's so boring that I'm not even going to discuss it because it's just so in-depth. Basically, you get the premise. Okay, gold has 79 atoms in it. If you take that gold and break it down to its lowest critical point, that's 2 atoms. And at 2 atoms, it's still a metal. It's still gold. But if you take it down to 1 atom, that 1 atom disintegrates and becomes monoatomic atoms. And at that point, it is no longer a metal. It is now a ceramic. So it has become something completely different. Okay, again, we're studying alien technology. We're trying to understand it from our viewpoint, but this is going to get really difficult. So now I have to let the PhDs get involved and explain it even further to you. So the first word, the first sentence of the first paragraph is ancient Egyptian. Folks, I don't speak ancient Egyptian, so I'm going to do my best to try to pronounce this. And I'm probably not going to come anywhere close, but I'm going to try. Okay, let's start. This is an article written by Stephen Robbins, PhD, and he explains it in the most simplistic way that you possibly can. But again, we're starting to go into quantum physics, beyond M theory, beyond string theory. This is a whole new kind of science that our scientists are trying to understand and deal with, and it is a lot of stuff. But anyway, let's go. Lufkans is the ancient Egyptian name for the transformed state of gold. By a special process of arc heating, gold and other platinum group metals can be turned into a single atom or monoatomic substance, a form of powder that has superconductive properties. The process was rediscovered starting in the late 1970s through the efforts of David Hudson, a large landowner and farmer near Yuma, Arizona. The high sodium content of much of Arizona's soil makes it crusty and impenetrable by water. So Hudson was attempting to use sulfuric acid to combat this. And in the course of analyzing the soil that was not dissolved by the acid, a strange substance began to emerge. Curiously, as it was observed, when it was exposed over time in the hot sun, small chunks of the soil that failed to dissolve would suddenly burst in a blaze of light and then disappear. Let's stop here and think about that. So what I'm saying to you here, folks, is first there was a substance. There's a physical matter there. There was a burst of light, and then it was gone. There was nothing there. What happened to it? Where did it go? This freaked the hell out of him. So, of course, he had to enlist the help of scientists to help him understand what just happened, what is going on with my soil. Because this guy was a farmer. So he had started enlisting the help of many scientists, and so the story goes. So, again, we're dealing with science that's from extraterrestrials. Our scientists are trying to understand it. Let me keep reading. It starts getting really weird. As an expert in arc emissions spectroscopy was engaged, the process involved placing a small sample in a carbon electrode cup and bringing another electrode down above it to create an arc. As the current flows, the elements in the sample literally boil off or ionize, giving off their specific light frequencies. Once the electrode burned itself away, about 15 seconds, the standard process still left a glowing white bead which comprised of 98% of the sample, but registering in the spectroscope nothing. Let me stop here. I want you to think about this. They put this sample in a spectroscope. They put an arc of electricity above it. They let it burn for 15 seconds, and what was left was a glowing white bead which comprised of 98% of that sample, but registered in the spectroscope as nothing was there. But yet they're looking at that glowing white bead. So they know something is there, they can see it, but the spectroscope is saying nothing is there. So of course, scientists being scientists, they checked their machinery, they made sure everything was working properly, they got another machine, they tried it again, they got more scientists involved. It goes on and on and on, and now we get to the point where they involve the Russians. Using a special Soviet-designed version which encapsulates the process in an inert gas such as argon, the elements of the soil sample again boil away. Small amounts of iron, silica, aluminum, titanium, etc. For 70 seconds it burned. All readings stopped. Then came palladium, ruthenium, rhodium, iridium, and at 220 seconds osmium, the metals of the platinum group. The test continued from 1983 to 1989 at Hudson's expense with highly qualified experts. The substance was heated at 1.2 degrees Celsius per minute and cooled at 2 degrees Celsius per minute. In the heating process, at the moment the sample changed from its original dullness to the whiteness of its bright bead in the subsequent powder, the weight fell to 56% of the original weight. The other 44% was inexplicably missing. Further heating at 1160 degrees in a vacuum resulted in a wonderfully clear glass and a return of 100% of the original weight. Repeatedly heating and cooling under an inert gas, the sample rose to 300 to 400% of its original weight, but when heated again, it weighed less than nothing, below zero. Let me stop here. Let's talk about that. Okay, they're heating it, they're cooling it. By doing this process over and over again, at one point, the sample rose to 300 and 400% of its original weight, which means it weighed 300 to 400% more than the original sample they put in there. So it got heavier. How could something get heavier? By heating it and cooling it. But they were doing it over and over again. And again, these are on different machines. These are different scientists. They're all running the same tests. They're all coming up with the same test results. This made no sense. This is not logical. This is not supposed to happen. But yet all the scientists were coming up with the same results, all using different machines. They could not understand it. And at one point, it weighed nothing. It weighed less than zero. How could the original sample weigh less than zero? Think about that. How could the original sample, by heating it and cooling it, its weight rose 300 to 400%? How could it get heavier? So you're talking about a substance This, this powdered gold, this monoatomic gold, that can be either heavier or weigh less than zero, depending on how it's heated, how long it's heated, and how it's heated. It's about to get a whole lot weirder, guys. Okay, let me continue reading. At this point, the sample would disappear from sight. Yeah, you heard me say it. It would literally disappear from sight. Once it weighed below zero, the sample that they were looking at in their machines would no longer be visible. The velometer and the live electrodes touched the ends of the substance when visible, revealed no conductivity whatsoever. The substance was at a high temperature. It was a superconductor. A superconductor does not allow any voltage potential or any magnetic field to exist within itself. It is a perfect insulator. It is extremely sensitive to magnetic fields of infinite, minute magnitudes and will respond to extremely small magnetic forces. Within such a conductor, a single frequency light flows, fluid-like, at the speed of sound. Its null magnetic fields repel both north and south magnetic poles, but it can absorb high magnetic energy, producing even more light. The Earth's magnetic field can give sufficient energy for it to levitate. This is what was happening to the apparently missing 44% of the weight. And when the sample registered as less than zero, the material was in full state of levitation. The field produced by the flowing light, which excludes all other fields, is determined as a Meissner field. With two superconductors are linked by their Meissner field over a distance, the two can act instantaneously in a process termed quantum coherence. For two particles in a coherent state and separated by a great distance, a change in one particle, for example its spin state, is instantaneously communicated to the other. This is despite the fact that given the classical limitations of the maximum velocity of communication at the speed of light, such instantaneous communication should not have happened. Let's stop here for a moment. Let's go back and read what I just read to you. Let's go back and review it. Okay, you've got this substance, this sample, in a machine. They're heating it, they're cooling it. Strange things are going on. It can weigh up to 300 to 400 times the amount of the original sample. By heating it and cooling it again, it can weigh less than nothing, below zero. Then at some point, it completely disappears from sight. Okay, the electrodes are touching the ends of the substance when it is visible and reveals no conductivity whatsoever. But yet this substance was at a high temperature, was a superconductor. So this powdered gold becomes a superconductor. It can become visible, it can become invisible. It can weigh 300 to 400 times its original weight, or it can weigh less than zero. I want you to think about that. This stuff was blowing the scientists' mind. They couldn't understand it. This is going beyond science. Einstein said nothing could travel faster than the speed of light. Now they've found something that does. And they can't understand it or explain it. And yeah, you think this is hard to understand? It's going to get a whole lot worse, y'all. Okay, hopefully y'all can understand the science behind it, behind what I'm about to say, because it's about to get really intense. Remember, this article was written by a PhD, and the reason why I chose this specific article first is because I was hoping it would be easier for you to understand instead of the high complexity of the other articles that were written about monoatomic gold, because this stuff is intense. And basically, you can tell from what I've already just said, before I've gotten any further, something that can be weigh 300 to 400 times its original weight, can weigh less than zero, can be visible and then become invisible. At this point in time, you know the military is already interested in this. Very, very interested in this. You already know that at this present time, the Soviets are also studying this. They are interested in it. So, hopefully, if you can't understand anything else beyond this point, understand that this is a great big whoop. This powdered gold, this monoatomic gold, um, they said the Anunnaki and Inky specifically said they were bringing back the gold to patch the hole in their ozone layer because their air was getting thinner and they needed to protect their planet. I have a feeling from what I'm reading here and the stuff we're about to get into, it's a whole lot more than that. So anyway, let's continue on. Hopefully you can follow along. As more light can continuously pour into the same space, any amount of energy can be stored in a superconductor and transmitted over any distance via quantum wave which knows no boundaries of space or time. You can start a superconductor by applying a magnetic field. It responds by flowing light inside, building a larger Meissner field. You drop a magnet in it and return in 100 years, that Meissner field will still be flowing. Indeed, in the course of its efforts, Mr. Hudson had made contact with scientists at the time from GE who had realized that monoatomic superconductors can enable the perfect environmentally friendly fuel cell. Hudson planned to start a manufacturing plant to produce this critical monatomic component. According to the theory of physicist Hal Pufhoff, at the point in heating when the powder, now termed by physicists as an exotic material or exotic matter, disappears, it resides outside of space-time in another dimension. Let me stop there. Let you think about that. Let me read that again so you can really let it sink in. At the point of heating when the powder, which is now termed in physics as exotic material or exotic matter, disappears, it resides outside of space-time in another dimension. Proof of this was ascertained by attempting to disturb and scoop the substance off the pan while invisible, so it would be in a new position when it was seen again. Let me stop here and let me explain that. Think about that. They're watching this substance in the machine, in a pan. It's sitting in a pan in the machine. They're heating it and cooling it. They're heating it and cooling it. It reaches a point where the substance in the pan becomes invisible. They can no longer see it at all. But they know there was a substance in there. They put it in the machine themselves. So they know there was a substance in there, even though they could not see it at that point. So they performed another little experiment. They opened up the machine and scooped the substance off the pan while it was invisible and put part of that substance in a completely different location, away from the machine, away from the original sample, so that it got it completely away from it. Okay? But when it was visible again, all of the sample was all together in the machine. Think about that for a minute. Let me say it again. And I know I'm being repetitive, but this is mind-blowing to me. Because in my head, I'm envisioning, and don't laugh at me, but you know, I'm me. I'm a little goofy. I'm a little silly. But in my mind, I'm envisioning Star Trek when they're going, and I can hear Scotty's voice, "Beam me up, Scotty." You know, where they're going in. They're visible. They're standing there. All of a sudden, they're invisible again, and then they come back. Scotty, beam me up, and they come back. So again, the substance is in the dish. It is visible. They see the substance in the dish. They see the sample. They heat it up. They cool it down. They heat it up again. At some point, it becomes invisible. So they open up the machine and they attempt to disturb and scoop out some of the substance off the pan while it is invisible. And then they place it in a new position. But when the substance in the machine reappears, all of the substance is there. No missing part. The original sample is there. How do you explain that? How do you explain that? Okay. The substance always returned to the same position. Discussions of exotic matter and stealth atoms began to appear in scientific journals in the early 1990s. Physics refers to the monatomic high-spin state as asymmetrical, deformed, high-spin nuclei. A corrective subject is the manipulation of space-time. In the Journal of Classical and Quantum Gravity, in 1994, it flatly states, "It is now known that it is possible to modify space-time in a way that allows a spaceship to travel in an arbitrarily large speed by a purely local expansion of the space-time behind the spaceship and a purely local concentration in front of it, a motion faster than the speed of light, reminiscent of the warp drive of science fiction." Spur and the American Scientist in 1994 reconciled that this relatively theoretic limit of velocity of the speed of light, arguing that when in warp drive, the craft would not really be traveling at all, for the true state of acceleration would be zero, making Spur's relocation of chunks of the space-time possible. The exotic matter, i.e., matter which has been gravitationally attraction of less than zero. Let me read that again. Making Spur's relocation of chunks of space-time possible. Exotic matter, i.e., matter that has a gravitational attraction of less than zero. Okay, we're getting to the part where even I don't understand it. So if you feel a little lost, yeah, you're not alone. Let us turn for a moment to the past. In 1904, a British archaeologist, Sir William Petrie, discovered a massive cave in the area of Sinai he believed to be the biblical Mount Horeb. Within the ancient temple dedicated to the goddess Hathor, the associated artifacts and inscriptions included a metallurgist's crucible, if you don't know what a crucible is, it's a stone bowl which was used for heating metals. This crucible indicated that it had been in continuous operation for 1,500 years. Hidden beneath the flagstones were a considerable quantity, many tons, of pure white powder. Within also were innumerous references to bread, the traditional hieroglyphics for light, and in the whole class of similar depictions, Hathor offers the emblem of life to the pharaoh, while behind her the treasurer holds a conical loaf of white bread. The conical loaves were the Shem and Na, the bread of life, associated with increased longevity and with travel to the realms of the afterlife. This was the providence of kings and nobles. It is now known that monatomic platinum group metals will resonate with deformed or cancerous body cells, relaxing and correcting the DNA, while iridium is tuned to the ends of the DNA strands, uh, turning the DNA itself into a superconductor. Let me read that again. That is important. We're going to go in more detail with the other physicists, but right now that's enough to deal with. It is now known that monatomic platinum group metals will resonate with deformed or cancerous body cells, relaxing and correcting the DNA, while iridium is tuned to the ends of the DNA strands and turning the DNA itself into a superconductor. Think about that. Okay, we'll read it some more. Mufkans, I can't pronounce it, was listed in the Egyptian list of precious substances, while the locality of the kings in the afterlife is called the field of Mufkans. It seems that there was a precise reason why Moses ground the golden calf to a powder, which he put in water and fed to the unruly Israelites. Read Exodus 32:20. It was to raise their consciousness. The Israelites themselves, it was argued, were expelled from their kingdom in Lower Egypt. They took with them their technology, the ark with its thick outer and inner plates of gold, both sandwiching in a layer of insulating wood, formed a massive capacitor. The solid gold lid alone is estimated to weigh 2,700 pounds, excluding the two golden cherubim perched on top, serving as electrodes when connected to an inner and outer plates respectively. Just sitting, it would accumulate a massive deadly charge. Within was a golden container, Mufkans, Shem Anah, or Mana. See Hebrews 9:4. The Bible makes it clear that the ark was capable of levitation. It had destructive powers. Recent works have suggested after the First Crusade, the Templars, apparently the custodians of the secret knowledge passed on for generations, recovered the ark from its hiding place, and it goes on about the Templar and the ark. I'm not even going to read that because I'm more interested in science. If y'all want to read it, well, pick up the Torah, pick up the Bible. You can read it for yourselves. But basically, they were talking about why Moses took that golden calf and turned it into powder and fed it to the Israelites. So anyway, and we also know from the Torah and from the Bible that the ark of the covenant did have levitational properties. It did give off an energy. It was used at times as a weapon. It did store a golden coffer which held the mana. Um, so, yeah, they were making references to that. If you want to read it for yourselves, it's in the Bible, it's in the Torah. Go for it. I'm dealing with the science here, y'all. Okay. Oh, my voice is going. Okay, going back to the reading. By 1995, at the demand of the Patent Office, Hudson was able to demonstrate the reverse process from a sample that was registered as iron, silica, and aluminum. There emerged an ingot of that analyzed as pure gold. The alchemists, including Newton himself, as modern scholars have uncovered, were apparently pursuing the ancient possibilities that was once quite well understood. But Hudson's story ends predictably. He was refused. Um, he was refused, and he was offered advances from an investor who was traced back to the Department of Defense. He was told that his project would never be allowed to be completed, and eventually he was shut down. He was hit with OSHA, EPA, fines, and red tape. As Garner notes, it is now destined to become a science of the big league players at government and corporate levels. Consequently, the stakes are high, and it's in the government's hands now. So the little farmer from Arizona got shut out. His invention got taken over, and that was it for him, basically. So anyway, that was the one PhD. Let's go to the other one. That one's going to be a little bit harder to understand. I hope this is not too boring. I think it's fascinating. But again, that first article was from a physicist by the name of Stephen Robbins, PhD. This one's a little bit more in-depth, more scientific. My voice is starting to give out, so I apologize, but hopefully y'all can follow along. Or maybe it's over your head, I don't know. Well, I'm going to try anyway. Throughout the past century, especially since the days of Albert Einstein, scientists have been searching for the holy grail of modern physics, which they classify as the unified theory of everything. This was led to some amazing discoveries and emergences in a whole new language, which includes superstrings, quarks, superconductivity, along with the awareness of other planes of existence beyond our own familiar space-time. In the field of quantum mechanics, scientists have recently confirmed that matter can indeed be in two places at once. It has now established that through quantum entanglement, particles millions of light years apart can be connected without physical contact. Space-time can now be manipulated. Teleportation has become a reality. Anti-gravity and gravity-resistant material is heralded for transportation, and for virtual science has led to a greater understanding of hyperdimensional environments. When discussing the attributes of monoatomic gold and monoatomic platinums, it would not be long before the potential of these metals will be announced as environmentally friendly fuel cells. They would supersede fossil fuels for transportation and other practical purposes. And at the same time, it's changing the future in the use of the medical arena, particularly in the field of cancer treatment. More especially, we look at the gravity-defying attributes of these exotic monoatomic substances and their abilities to superconduct and literally bend space-time. The truly astonishing fact about this enigmatic white powder of high-spun gold and platinum group metals is that it is not actually a new discovery. The ancient Mesopotamians called it Shem-an-na. The Egyptians described it as Mufkons. I can't pronounce it. Is the ancient Egyptian name for the transformed state of gold, while the Alexandrians venerated it as the gift from paradise. And later chemists, such as Flamel, called it the philosopher's stone. At all stages of its history, the sacred powder was reckoned to have extraordinary powers of levitation, transmutation, and teleportation. It is said to produce a brilliant light and deadly rays, while at the same time being a key to active physical longevity. In today's world, the Institute of Advanced Studies in Texas has described the substance as exotic matter, and superconductivity, one of its primary characteristics, has been claimed by the Center of Advanced Studies in Illinois as the most remarkable physical properties in the universe. It is clear, however, from the documentary evidence of ancient times that the attributes of superconductors and gravity-defying devices were known, if not understood, in a distant world of priestly levitation, godly communication, and phenomenal power of the electrics. And the electrics is spelled in the Greek. In the Greek mythology, the quest for the secret of the substance is at the heart of the Golden Fleece legend, while in biblical terms, it is the mysterious realm of the Ark of the Covenant. The golden coffer which Moses brought out of Sinai and was later housed in the Temple of Jerusalem. Irrespective of all of this, the earliest historical record of Mufkons, I can't pronounce it, the powder is probably the most telling of all. It appears in a very specific guise in the Egyptian temple text. Sacred writings which adorn the 5th dynasty pyramid tomb of King Unas in Saqqara. While it is described the locality in which the king is said to live forever with the gods. It is called the Field of Mufkons. I can't pronounce it. An ethereal location associated with an otherworldly dimension called the Realm of the Blessed. Given the mysterious process concerning gold has an alchemical ring about them, and since monatomic powder is classified as a stone, let us consider the writings of the 17th century alchemist Phileas. This renowned British philosopher, revered by Isaac Newton, Robert Boyle, Elias Ashmole, and other Royal Society fellows of his day, produced a work in 1667 entitled Secrets Revealed. In this treatise, he discussed the nature of the philosopher's stone, which, excuse me. In this treatise, he discussed the natures of the philosopher's stone, which is commonly thought to be transmuted base metal into gold. Setting the record straight, he made a point that the stone was itself made of gold, and that the philosopher's art was in performing this process. He stated, "Our stone is nothing but gold, digested to the highest degree of purity and subtle fixation. Our gold, no longer vulgar, is the ultimate goal of nature." Another treatise entitled A Brief Guide to the Celestial Ruby, he stated, "It is called a stone by virtue of its fixed nature. It resists the action of fire as successfully as any stone. In species, it is gold, more pure than the purest. It is fixed, incombustible like a stone, but its appearance is that of a very fine powder. Sometime earlier in the 15th century, the French chemist Nicolas Flamel wrote of his last testament, dated the 22nd of November 1416, that when the noble metal was perfectly dried and digested, it made a fine powder of gold, which is the philosopher's stone. Returning to ancient Egypt, we find another and further reference to the Mufkons. I can't pronounce it. Sorry, y'all. At various sacred locations. One of these relates to the treasures of Pharaoh Tutmosis III, as reproduced in a brief relief at the Temple of Karnak. In the metals section, there are a number of cone-shaped objects. They are explained as being made of gold, but carrying a rather odd description. They call them white bread. It was at Karnak where, in about 1450 BC, Tutmosis III founded his metallurgy fraternity of master craftsmen. With 39 members on the High Council, they were called the Great White Brotherhood, a name which is said derived from the preoccupation with the mysterious white powder. The powder features again in the Alexandrian document called the Iter Alexandriae Magnae ad Paradisium. This is an old parable of Alexander the Great's journey to paradise, the kingdom of Ahura Mazda, the Persian god of light. The account features the enchanted paradise stone, which had numerous magical properties and was said to outweigh its own quantity of gold, although when transposed to a powder, even a feather could tip the scales against it. Think about that for a minute. Let me stop reading. Remember, this substance can weigh less than zero when heated and turned into a powder. And again, we're reading ancient texts that specifically say, and this is from the journeys of Alexander the Great, his journey to paradise. Let me read that again. The account features the enchanted paradise stone, which had numerous magical properties and was said to outweigh its own quantity of gold, although when transposed to a powder, even a feather could tip the scales against it. I think we're talking about the same stuff here, y'all. So anyway, let's keep reading. The power's association with light was discovered again by archaeologist Sir William Petrie in 1904, researching the mountain wilderness of the Sinai for the Egyptian Exploration Fund. He discovered an unknown Egyptian temple at the summit, better known as Mount Horeb, from the biblical account of Moses and the Ark of the Covenant. Here in this complex of halls and shrines, there were numerous inscriptions relating to Mufkuts. I can't pronounce it. Accompanying a variety of hieroglyphs for light. Also in line with the Karnak reliefs, presentations of conical bread cakes were apparent on the wall carvings. One of these representations of Tutmosis IV in the presence of the goddess Hathor. Before him were two offerings. Wait, let me stop. I misread that. Before him were two offering stands topped with lotus flowers, and behind him a man standing bearing a conical object described as white bread. Another relief portrays the treasurer Sabek-hopet-tep presenting a conical loaf to Pharaoh Amenhotep. I can't read. I'm getting tired, y'all. Let me start over. Another relief portrayed the treasurer Sabek-hopet presenting a conical loaf to Pharaoh Amenhotep III. In this respect, however, Sabuhotep is described as he who brought the noble, the precious stone to his majesty, and he is called the Great One over the secrets of the house of gold. In all cases where Hafkufs, I can't even pronounce it, the powder is allied to gold, bread, and light. The classifications as a stone, excuse me, and classified as a stone. It also relates to fire. Interestingly, these things are all brought together in the Old Testament book of Job, which states, "As for the earth, out of it cometh bread, and under it is turned up, as it were fire. The stones of it are the places of sapphires, and it hath the dust of gold." Another biblical text from the book of Exodus also discusses this mysterious combination, but in a form which leaves one step nearer to the bread connotations by describing the white powder as a type of food. It appears in the story of Moses and the Israelites at Mount Horeb in the Sinai, when Moses is disturbed to find that his brother Aaron has collected the gold rings from the Israelites and forged them into a golden calf as an idol of worship. The account relates that Moses took the golden calf, burned it with fire, transposed it into a powder, mixed it with water, and fed it to the Israelites. This story has long baffled theologians because heating and burning gold with fire does not, of course, produce powder. It produces molten gold. Later in the story, however, it's explained that the fine powder could be wiped with frankincense and made into bread cakes, which the Bible calls the bread of the presence. All of this is mixed and mingled with accounts of fire on the mountain and the express importance of the Ark of the Covenant, the golden coffer which sent out deadly spears of lightning from between the wings of the cherubim, which surmounted its lids. In keeping with the bread of the presence, these bolts of the arc light were similarly referred to as the presence, seemingly the presence of God, and to the Greeks they called it electrics. Back in Old Babylonia, the enigmatic white powder was called an-na, meaning firestone, and when made into conical cakes, it was shem-an-na, denoting cone shape or highward firestone. According to the Bible, the Israelites referred to the bread powder as manna, which sounds somewhat similar. It is explained by Josephus in his first-century Antiquities of the Jews that the term manna was actually a question meaning, "What is it?" And the book of Exodus confirms this, stating, "They called it manna because they knew not what it was." This is totally in line with Mufkas. Excuse me. In the Egyptian Book of the Dead, alternatively called the Papyrus of Ani, the 18th dynasty scroll from Thebes, acquired by the British Museum in 1888, is extensively illustrated and around 76 feet in length. In this ancient ritualistic work, the pharaoh who seeks terminal enlightenment asks, at the completion of each stage of his journey, the repetitive question, "What is it?" Other similar texts date back to the 3rd millennium BC, and it is clear from the Mount Horeb reliefs in the Sinai that the Egyptian kings were ingesting the white powder of gold from around 2380 BC. However, only the metallurgists of the mystery schools, also known as the master craftsmen, knew the secret of its manufacture, and the ultimate high priest of Memphis held the title of the Great Artificer. The terminal enlightenment, or as the Greeks called it, the gnosis, was an ideal of perpetual quest, as against the physical and against the physical body. One has also reckoned to have a light body, which similarly had to be fed as to be nourished and to grow. The light body was called Ka, and although essential an entangled feature of life, it was said to remain active in the afterlife. The food of the Ka was light, which generated enlightenment, and the generative substance of light was mufkans, or the white powder of gold. Holding this information in mind while remembering all aspects of such discoveries have been a constant source of bewilderment for historians, theologians, and even scientists. We can now move forward in time to our present era. Taking our leave of the Middle East, our story will continue in America while, quite by chance, the mysteries of this long-forgotten science were rediscovered quite recently. Only did Mufkans re-emerge to find a place in the forefront of quantum physics research, but the story of the Ark of the Covenant, the accounts of the lightning, levitation, and other godly attributes of the ancient texts quite suddenly becomes modern scientific reality. Okay, it goes on and on about all the scientific research that they did on the substance, and it's just too much information, and my voice is starting to slowly go. What I want to leave you with is a little bit of the research that they're doing as far as the medical field, because I just found that absolutely fascinating. Let me scroll down here so I can find it. Here it is. Okay, I'm sorry, my voice is starting to go. In May 1995, issues of Scientific American, the I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, y'all. I'm trying to get over this cold. In May of 1995, issues of Scientific American, the effect of the platinum group metal ruthenium was discussed in relation to human DNA. It was pointed out that when a single ruthenium atom was placed at each end of the short strand of DNA, the strands became 10,000 times more conductive. It becomes, in effect, a superconductor. For some time, chemists had suspected that the double helix might create a highly conductive path along the axis of the molecule, and here was confirmation of the fact. Similarly, the Platinum Metals Review has featured regular articles concerning the use of platinum, iridium, ruthenium in the treatment of cancers, which was caused through the abnormal and uncontrolled division of body cells. When a DNA state is altered, as in the case of cancer, the application of the platinum compound will resonate with a deformed cell, causing the DNA to relax and become corrected. Such treatment involves no surgery. It does not destroy surrounding tissue with radiation, nor kill the immune system, as does chemotherapy or radiotherapy. The medical profession entered the high-spin arena when the Biomedical Research Division of Bristol-Myers Squibb announced that the ruthenium atoms interact with DNA, correcting the malfunction in cancer cells. Atomic gold and monoatomic gold and monoatomic platinum metals are in effect stealth atoms, and it has been ascertained that the body cell communicates with each other by way of stealth atoms through the system of light waves. What the new science determined is that monoatomic ruthenium resonates with DNA, dismantles the short-length helix, and rebuilds it again correctly, just as one might dismantle and resurrect a dilapidated building. It is known that both iridium and rhodium have anti-aging properties, with ruthenium and platinum compounds interacting with the DNA and the cellular body. It is also known that gold and the platinum metals, in their monoatomic high-spun state, can activate the endocrine glandular system in a way that heightens awareness, perception, intuition to extraordinary levels. In this regard, it is constituted that the high-spin powder of gold has a distinctive effect upon the pineal gland, producing melatonin production. Likewise, the monoatomic powder of iridium has a similar effect on the serotonin production of the pituitary gland and would appear to be reactive to the body's junk DNA along with underused and unused parts of the brain. It continues on and on and on and on about all the uses, the scientific uses, and it's just way too much to take in because I know I've bombarded you with a lot of science, with a lot of information, and it's amazing. I am completely blown away by this because, to be honest, when I was reading the books of Zechariah Sitchin and the about the Anunnaki and about the gold, I didn't put it together that what they were really doing is powdering the gold. It wasn't until after I reread it actually a couple of times before I realized they were turning that gold into powder, and I could not understand why or how they were doing it. It didn't make sense to me. And as all of you know, lately I've been studying the debris fields, looking at, the orbs and figuring out the orbs in the debris field. And it really didn't cross my mind about the gold until that one YouTuber left a comment. And again, that YouTuber's name is Power Mad. And I said I would dedicate a video to them. Well, this video is dedicated to you if you could get through all of the science. I know it was a lot. And again, now I understand why no other Nibiru researcher has put up a YouTube video about the gold itself. It's because it's so complicated, it's so complex, and it's such mind-blowing science. Here you have gold that is a metal. It has 79 atoms in it. You reduce that atom to 2. It is still metal at that point. With 2 atoms, it is still gold, it is still a metal. Once you reduce that gold down to 1 atom, that 1 atom disintegrates and becomes monoatomic atoms. But it is no longer a metal. It is now a ceramic. But this ceramic can do some amazing things. You put a sample in a machine and you start measuring it. You heat it up, you cool it down, you heat it up, you cool it down. By the way, I didn't read that part to you, but it also stated that the Soviet scientists who were working on it perfected the heating technique. And the heating technique is you put an electrode over the top of it to make it an arc, and you heat it for 300 seconds. That's the proper heating. You've got to heat it long enough for it to become the white powder. At the time it becomes the white powder, that's when I almost want to say magical properties, because I'm so blown away by this. It's hard to believe. It's almost like science fiction, but yet it's real. You've got this powder, this white powder, in a dish. You put it in a machine, and you can weigh this thing. You can heat it up and weigh it, and it can weigh up to 300 to 400% more than the sample that you originally put it in there. Or you could heat it up and cool it down, and it can weigh less than zero. That in itself blows my mind. Then we get to the part where it can appear and disappear. So you've got this thing, this sample in a machine, and they're looking at it. They can see the samples there. They heat it up, and it completely disappears. It becomes invisible. It has gone into a different dimension of time and space. Again, one of the experiments that they performed is when it went invisible, they opened up the machine and attempted to scoop out some of the invisible material, and they took that material that they scooped out and they took it to a completely different place. And when that material came visible again in the machine, all of the material was there. So this is probably not the proper word, but I'm going to use it anyway. It reconstituted itself. Or you could say that it was never there to begin with. When it became invisible, it went to an altered dimension. I don't know what to think about that. That blows my mind. That blows my mind. And then it starts talking about the superconductivity of this powder. Basically, you can turn it into a Meissner field, drop a magnet in it, come back 100 years later, and that field is still there. Think about that. As far as a machine, if you could create a machine that never stops, that never needs fuel, for 100 years it would be working. It would never stop working. And it's from a little bit of powdered gold. That's unbelievable. Why the hell are we building nuclear power plants when we could be doing this freaking gold? It's mind-blowing, and it's over my head. So I do understand why other YouTubers have not even broached this subject. I know it's a lot of science for y'all to take in. You're probably going to have to listen to it over and over again. As usual, I suggest that you do your own research. Look up gold. Look up colloidal gold. Look up monatomic gold. But again, they said that they were using the powdered gold to patch the hole in their ozone for their basic survival, because their atmosphere was becoming thinner. The crops weren't growing. Things were dying because of that hole in their ozone. And apparently that powdered gold does a whole lot more. Brilliant. Just brilliant. I don't know what else to say other than we'll talk some more in another video. I know I've given you way too much information now. I'll let you think about it. I'll let you consider it. As usual, post any comments below. If you have any questions and you don't want to write a comment, send me email. I'll put my email address down below so you can send me some email. I'll be happy to answer any of your questions. I know one of the questions you're going to ask me, because one of my friends already asked me, are you going to try to get some of this monatomic gold and try it for yourself? Yes, I am. I got to be honest, yes, I am. I'm going to try colloidal gold, even though I can't pronounce it. And I would like to try this monatomic gold just to see what happens. Um, so before you even ask me that question, I'm going to go ahead and answer it. Yeah, I would like to see. I would like to see what this stuff looks like. I would like to see what this stuff does. I'm interested. I'm confused. I'm puzzled. But we'll talk more about it. That's enough for this video, and I hope y'all are all well and doing great. Until we meet again, talk to you later.